So, part 2 of this virtue series, I'm going to communicate about motives. Motives have a lot to do with virtue. Motives and your intention behind what people say and do has a lot to do with virtue. And this could be for man or woman, even though the word virtuous is presented as in Mishle, which is Hebrew for Proverbs 31. And Mishle states that there is no value above a virtuous woman. While people put value in money and rubies and things like that, that the value of a virtuous woman is beyond that. Okay? Meaning that when guys say, oh, I gotta go make money, or I gotta go, it's because they can't find virtue. They will have to settle for something that they don't want to raise children with. And this is not speaking on the man who was a hit and run kind of guy, or wasn't raised appropriately, or didn't ever see a man love a woman, or wasn't taught how to proper value a woman, because unfortunately some of these things have to be taught. And when a man gets old enough and he starts to look for a wife, or he just realizes his player fuckboy ways are not going to produce anything good for him in his life. Maybe he's on his 7th child, or on his 19th baby mama, or on his 1,000th body that he's had sex with. Who knows? That being the case, and I know I'm being extreme, but with that being the case, with children starting having sex at like too young, and it's ridiculous. And so then we go to adulthood and 21 and above, where they're out here intermingling, Match.com, TwinkleToes.com, whatever. The nonsense that is out here, which is pushing promiscuity, right? High levels of judgment in the church body, which pushes people away from any type of some type of nurturing, right? That could maybe lead them to some form of righteousness, right? So if they don't have anybody teaching them from a man perspective how to love and appreciate a woman, and the world is teaching them to hate, and the world is teaching them that it's okay for them to put extra notches on their belt by having sexual experiences, because then you'll know how to be sexual, and all these other things that are supposed to be adapted within a marriage, right? But we're talking about this artificial intelligence out here that is being presented as wisdom and knowledge. Oh, they call it knowledge. It's like, oh, and so guys feel some kind of way. They're ego driven, and they say, oh, I'm supposed to know this already. And so what do? They go out and use women in order to gain this false experience. So then you have these women who want to feel validated by being with the man, because society says a woman is not up to par if she's not with the man. Okay? And these are for women who have proper affection, right? We're not talking about those women who are not in the proper affection. Then you have these whole people just confused, because they not with the man, they just want to be with somebody to feel accepted. And so now they're crossing borders. And it's just like, has society outdone itself? I would say yes. Society has outdone itself. Now, there was a time in the Bible, in Bereshit, in Genesis 11, where it says the people were in unity, right? And they spoke one language. The language was Hebrew. But this is the issue. Their leadership. They worshipped a false god. And the false god wanted a tower built And this Nimrod, this leader, was so in control that he had these people building him a tower because he wanted to show his power to the heavens, right? And now this might correlate to people giving them gods and other people, right? And so with that being the case, you got Zeus and all these other mythical god, like, so Nimrod was this person of biblical times where he controlled a whole lot of people. And these people followed him to the point where they were like, sure, we're going to build you this thing. So what did God have to come do? God had to come down from heaven, because when the people were in unity, they were determined to do this thing, even though it was the wrong thing. But their togetherness made it possible, right? Them deciding that this was going to be the new trend made it possible for enough people to actually decide to do the same thing, minus the expletive. So they get to a point where they're nearing the sky. And what does God have to do? He has to intervene. He has to intervene because they're together, bringing their ideas together, producing all this nonsense that he will not allow into heaven. Now, heaven has standards even if people don't. So what did God do? He dispersed them and took away their ability to understand one another. And when they stopped understanding one another, what happened? They stopped communicating. They stopped liking each other. They stopped being together. They were dispersed. And then the Bible said, and then they were dispersed to different parts of the earth. So God can do that however he wants to, right? Okay. This was the Tower of Babel. Bereshit 11, Genesis 11, building for this false god and for a wrong purpose. Now, I say that to correlate to issues that we're having in society today. Some of these issues are that man and woman can't be together or stay together, or they don't want to reproduce together. Why? Because they're not really set to be together. They cannot communicate. There's whole books called Men Are From Mars, Men Are From Venus. Now, this is not true for all people, because I believe that spiritual people are united in Christ and Mashiach, and with them people, those people are the ones who probably will be able to procreate. And God will do it by any means necessary, because he needs his people on the earth, right? A lot of people get judged for having children in and outside of relationships, without having a father or without having a wife, to guide or protect but God is all of that. God is our guide and our protection, right? So with that being the case, now you have modern day society where you have all these people set to do the wrong thing. Well, you have all these people set to do the wrong thing. God is still the Father of this universe. He's still omnipotent. He's still omnipresent. He's still omniscient. He's all-knowing, all-sufficient, and all-seeing. So, he is quite aware of the ignorance that is pervading this world, causing a lot of brain perversion. Man, I'm talking about the things that people would never have accepted just 10 years ago are now being paraded, and I do mean paraded, through society. And I just think that is a sign that virtue is now maybe minor. There's hardly anything hidden anymore. And the Bible said that there will be nothing new on the earth, meaning that in the sense of that people are not surprised. It's like, oh, well, that's new. No, That's what that means. It's kind of like, it's one of the meanings of that, to say that people are not even shocked. Their kids have this access to things that they shouldn't have access to. And parents are not parenting because they don't have the ability to take these addictive things from their children. Or if they do, then you have more jails with young adults now because children are not being nurtured appropriately because both people are working or they're not together. You see, there's a disbursement, right? And so with that being the case, I just think people are not aware that that society is already being punished. Society has already been punished. But the good thing about it is that God will work to care for his own, right? And so there's still an issue that's going to have to come with alignment. There's still a time of alignment that is being permitted, right? Where we have a time to align ourselves with God's principles and to find ourselves back to being virtuous, right? But I think that people have to reestablish what really is virtue. And there's only one way to do that. And that is by finding God's true path. By actually finding God's true word. And actually aligning themselves with God's word, and actually being honest about some of the situations that they're a part of, and actually saying, I'm not comfortable to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't think women want to be sleeping around with a whole lot of people. I don't think men really want to be having multiple relationships with women. I don't think they really want to undervalue people. I don't think that's what they really want to do. I just think they're in a cycle of confusion based on bad choices and also bad guidance and being a follower of things that are evil in general. So it's just like there's still work and accountability for each person. There's still an accountability for each person. So people still are going to have to be accountable. That means they're still going to have to stop doing the things they're not supposed to do, like sleeping around with multiple women, or being jackasses, or ghosting people, or just doing this random nonsense that just wasn't accepted back in the day. Just saying, like, it's not even like back in the day. It's just like common sense, like yesterday. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's just like, now would you teach your child that was okay? It's like, even girls do stuff to girls, and guys do things to guys. Like, and like, this is so childish when they're supposed to be an adult. They're actually supposed to be an adult, somebody who's able to give an example to another human being, right? But it's like, no, you cannot even trust adults. But the Bible was wise about that, to tell them, do not even trust man. You see, because man is double-minded and man is confused, and man will backtrack on something they said yesterday if somebody tells them tomorrow that I'll give you $1 million to think this, or literally, like, I'll give you money to say this, or I'll give you, or I will have someone pay you. So basically people are selling their souls. But all that was to say, Part 2, that virtue a lot hinges on false narratives, which I consider to be now artificial intelligence, because I believe they are programming, or people are allowing themselves to be programmed by a whole system that they know is not good. It's like, and then people make excuses for why they allow their children or they accept it. But I'm like, but are you truly aligning your principles with God? And so people don't want to toe the line. The Bible says narrow is the path that leads to righteousness. Narrow. It's a narrow path. But broad is the way that leads to destruction, right? And so that being the case, it's like if there were virtue and there were some virtue to be gained, I believe it's going to have to come from a spiritual, fast, where we're going to have to just reinvest in purification things, like cutting out the nonsense of the music, cutting out activities that don't really relate to a future that's going to be capable of supporting. We have to do the things that are going to support what we would want our children to be about. And so many people are lowering their standards. They're denying their true feelings to allow acceptance for things that are truly demonic. Literally, people possessed with demons here just to deter people. And unfortunately, when God saw the demons, he said, I cast them out of you. People are afraid to be bold. Before, when we made people have to get rid of them demons, the world was a better place. When we had to cast out them demons and say, I rebuke you. What happened? They went into the pigs, and the pigs committed suicide. So it stopped the person from having to do it. The person got delivered, but the animals, you see, and ever since then, some races don't even eat pigs because they could take on spirits. They could take in spirits, right? And so we have to watch what we eat. We have to watch we have to watch what we ingest in our bodies physically. Then why can't we watch what we ingest in our minds mentally, and what we ingest through our eyes, and what we allow for through our ears? So it's just it's like, some people know that people are not smart. Some people know that people are insecure. Some people know that people are ego-driven. Some people just know this. And some people just purposely make words like influencer and follower and leader, just to appeal to that side that wants to feel validated. Now, I being a person of social science background, and a teacher and a leader and an educator, and someone who studied the Bible a lot, and someone who is caring and thoughtful, and having experienced a lot of situations where I could speak to things and without having to tell everything. My goal is just to help somebody be wiser. Wiser the more. Because with wisdom, God can command blessings for people. You don't get them blessings. People have to toil now. That was the curse of Adam and Eve. That they had to work. They have to toil. So what do you see people now trying to do? Finding ways not to work. Finding ways not to have to toil. Right? And it's just but that was the curse put on man. Why? Because man evaded his responsibility of protecting women. But it was man's job to toil and woman's job to continue to be a helpmate. What was woman's curse? Woman's curse was not to toil. It was that she would have to maybe have pain and childbirth, and that her seed would stomp out the head of the serpent. And he already came. And now he's supposed to be living in us, and we're supposed to be doing that daily in our spiritual walk. That we are destroying Satan. Women are supposed to be creating seeds that destroy Satan, not seeds that allow for his spirit that went into a pig, and the pigs are like, I don't want this, I'd rather die. That's what the pig decided. The pigs, they all decided they would rather just nope. And people are out here living and reproducing content that is filled with those evil spirits. And so that's what I'm saying, is that people have to remind themselves to go back to some kind of virtuous principle in order to create virtue in life. Not about being your boy and not about being the best friend. Like, guys have to go back to having a standard and saying, nope, I can't man you up for having sex with 15 ladies last week. I can't buy this record for Drake so I can talk about how I can degrade women. I can't sing this song that depicts a whole thing that's rapey. You know what I'm trying to say? Or gang related or violent. Because it's not going to be edifying. You know what I'm trying to say? And people just want to feel validated and so cool. But see, people got to make sure that they find their virtue and validation through God. And then when they feel so lost and deep, they know how high standards God has, then people slump down to start being and accepting less. But God always wants us to bring more. And this is helping me and, hopefully someone else. Because it just reminds you not to lower our standards to what? To fall into validation. Okay? That's all I got to say about this. And I'm going to make one more video about this to discuss how men and women are kind of doing this on a daily basis, trying to make it a trend because these young people are looking. God is holding the older people accountable for what is happening with these younger people. And I just don't think that people are really taking it seriously, that there's still someone, that the Spirit of God is here. This is his earth, and he's still watching and observing us, even though, there's an opposing force. But with that being the case, there is still, if you call yourself a man or woman of virtue, or man or woman, or claim some spirituality, go to church, or do any type of thing that states that you have a belief system, well, then you literally cannot, it's such a narrow path. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but I'm just saying that it's a narrow path. And a lot of people are just being too broad, just trying to widen a path because they don't want to have to stay on that narrow path. It's uncomfortable to do. It's uncomfortable, or either it's so comfortable it's accepted. But anything like that is not proper. And I just think we just have to be like more virtuous in thinking, like, what do I have standards anymore? And if I do have standards, let me reestablish them. That's what we should be doing for January 2023 and beyond, to say, let's start reestablishing true standards and true virtue.